Welcome to Terrifying and Twisted.
Do you want a brew?
Hey up!
Alright, how's it going? Everyone alright?
I hope so.
I hope so too.
What episode is this?
12.
Welcome to episode 12. Terrifying and Twisted. I'm Phil.
I'm Carla, the wife.
The wife.
So, what we been up to?
Not much.
No, not all.
We're pretty fucking boring, to be honest.
We are. Really boring, simple people.
We've got 3 kids and a dog, so it's more than enough to keep anyone occupied.
It is. I think about this the other day. We've not even rushed out shopping anywhere, have we? To any shops that have opened, we haven't rushed out to a pub.
No.
We haven't done none of that.
I waited a few weeks for a fishing tackle shop.
Yeah, you did. You only went Friday, really, didn't you?
Yeah.
Properly.
As 2 youngest kids are at Seaside with Nana and Grandad.
Yeah, one's just had his donut nicked by a seagull. He's going to be livid.
Eldest is out and about.
On that push bike of his, like always.
Just in case you're new to the podcast, me and Carla each do a case. We don't know anything about the case, what each of us doing apart from the names.
Yeah, just tell each other the name, that's it.
Yeah, there will be a few cases which I do know about because I do listen to a lot of podcasts, but we just do best we can.
Yeah, we do. You tend to know more of mine, but that's because you do listen to podcasts a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
All my information I have gathered from you, running home to tell me about what sick person you've listened to.
Please give us a bit of love.
Yeah, do.
Like us Facebook page, like us Insta page, any reviews, anything.
Even if it's just sharing us posts.
Yeah.
That's all we ask. We're trying to get it built up, aren't we, a little bit?
Yeah.
Trying to be a bit more interacting on there. See how that goes.
Yeah.
Telly-wise, we've been pretty boring, haven't we? The usual.
Well, we watched an ITV drama called Viewpoint. And we watched it for 4 days.
Probably like a lot of people else out there as well.
And by the 5th day, the main actor was accused of sexual harassment. So, not that I find that funny, I just find it funny that we didn't even get to watch the last episode.
It is on ITV Hub, apparently.
Yeah,
so
we'll have to find and download it.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother ball game, isn't it?
We watched another documentary on Sky Crime.
Yeah, were it Lee Irving?
Yeah.
That were awful.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Disability.
Is it called a disability hate crime?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this poor young man, I felt for his mum because she knew just because he turned 18 and he was now classed as an adult, he wasn't an adult.
It must have been difficult for her to sort of say, no, you're not doing that. No, you can't go there because it is a grown man.
Yeah.
But
he just hasn't got the understanding of a grown man.
It's a sad story.
Yeah, recommend anybody
it's
watching.
A sad case.
It's not nice, is it?
No.
Line of Duty as well.
Yeah, Line of Duty.
The final episode of this series.
Final episode tonight, so we're looking forward to that.
Do you think it's going to be a wrap? Has that been said about a series 7?
Well, I know of.
I've got a feeling, that they could try and wrap this up. I think tonight, my prediction is we're going to lose someone big.
Like Kate. Or Steve.
Can't be Steve.
Or Hastings.
No. I don't know. I've just got a feeling with the whole pushing his retirement, the closing down of AC12, I've got a feeling they're trying to wrap it up. And if they do, I'm gonna be gutted.
So if you haven't watched Line of Duty, please get it watched.
Oh, binge watch the whole from series 1.
They had a record of 13.8 million people on
views.
Were
it last week's view, wasn't it?
Yeah. So today's Sunday, 2nd of May, and 2 of my closest friends, it is their birthday today, so happy birthday, Yemi.
Yes.
One of my oldest friends. And happy birthday, Lee Richardson, another close friend. So we hope you have a good birthday, you old
bastards.
I'll
say it, I'm not bothered. Do you want me to just jump straight into my case?
Yeah.
Now, I know that you know about this case.
Yeah.
So, I hope that I can do it justice. I hope maybe there's something in there that
the case is that bonkers anyway.
It is. It's a bit fucked.
Yeah.
Completely fucked.
Proper fact.
So I want to speak to you and tell you the story of Karla and Paul. Now it's Karla, is it Homolka?
Homolka, I would have said.
Right, and Paul Bernardo. So Karla was 17 years old and she was an high school student. She had a part-time job at a local pet shop and that's what she was doing when she first met Paul. Paul was 23 years old and he was studying at the University of Toronto and he was studying to become an accountant. It's said that he was really good in uni, well on his way to graduate. No one ever complained about him. Got his head down, did really well. In October of 1987, Karla was working a stall at a pet food convention that she'd gone to with her, and this was in Scarborough in Toronto. That night, Karla and a co-worker went to the hotel restaurant for some tea. When they were sat there, Paul walked in, and apparently him and Karla made eye contact and they just had this massive connection.
Love at first sight.
Sort of, I don't know how true it is. You know. Does it happen? Who knows? But apparently it was a mega lust at first sight. They spent all night together just talking. Now, Paul was over 6 foot tall. He was said to be an extremely good looking young man. He was quite charming. Aren't they fucking all?
Well, I'm quite charming.
Anyway, he approached Karla and, like I said, they spent all night together. This co-worker decided, I'm going to leave them to it. They're getting on really well. So off she went. After the restaurant closed, they then went back to Karla's room and engaged in some sexual relations. Karla thought Paul was the man of her dreams. They made a really good looking couple. And that's why they got the name, the Barbie and Ken Killers.
Ken and Barbie Killers.
Yeah, well, Ken and Barbie, let's not overstep copyrights. Fuck's sake. Paul also told all his friends about Karla, so it pretty much seemed to everybody around him that
this is a good thing.
Yeah, they were so into each other, spent all the time together. So Karla was the oldest of 3 daughters. She was pretty and she was well liked in school. Growing up, she lived in St Catherine's in the province of Ontario. Hope I've said that right.
Ontario.
Maybe. Say it again.
Ontario.
Let me start that sentence again then. Growing up, she lived in St Catherine's in the province of...
Go on.
I can't say it.
Ontario.
I
might not even be fucking saying it right.
Anyway.
Just say it how it fucking is.
Ontario.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
With a family, right? So in school, it said that Karla had quite a few different boyfriends, and if she hadn't dated them, most of the boys were interested in her. Again, she was just really popular. But once she met Paul, that's all she talked about. He obviously was a bit of an older man. He was in university, and she actually saw him as quite a good catch, and she was right into him. So Paul, he was the youngest of 3. Everyone said that he was a really sweet kid with an extremely charming side. He had a bit of a, I'm not going to say shitty upbringing, because we do these cases and we read backgrounds of some of these people, and some really do. Not that justifies it, but some really do have horrific
upbringing.
Yeah, just awful. Now, Paul's actually weren't that bad. His mum was verbally abusive quite badly. I'm not saying that isn't bad anyway, but what I mean in consideration to what some go through, yeah. Then when Paul was 16, he found out that the man that he'd been calling dad growing up actually weren't his real dad. This is said to have come out in a bit of a heated argument between him and his mum. So he had absolutely no idea, and she just blurted it out.
He ain't your daddy.
Something like that. So that completely ruined any relationship between him and his mum and this guy who we thought were his dad. And it's also said that it's around this time that Paul started peeping. And he would peep through windows of any of his neighbours. He'd watch them undress. He'd do this quite a lot.
Peeper?
A peeper.
A Jeepers Creepers Peepers.
Yeah. So, and he would do it a lot. But eventually, peeping weren't enough.
It's not enough.
It's not enough. It has to get a bit worse. So he then started to fantasise about taking advantage and basically controlling women. These thoughts apparently got darker and darker. Then by September of 1983, Paul starts uni at Toronto. The friends and anyone that knew him really liked him. He had this charm about him. He could basically make friends with anybody. He'd walk into a bar, start chatting to someone and to be his best mate. He were also seen as life and soul of a party. And if Paul were going to be at a party, you knew it were going to be a good one. Paul had a few girlfriends. Everybody said same, that they all started really, really well. This picture-perfect relationship. But it always seemed to change, and it always started with the sexual relationship that changed. He'd become abusive and violent and controlling. So that's when girl would end up saying,
Fuck this,
I'm out of here. And off they'd go. Then, spring 1988, a sexual predator was roaming the streets in Scarborough. By the May of that year, there were 7 different reports made by different women to the local police about them being attacked. So, police went on TV, warned all local women to be extra careful, don't go out late at night on your own, don't walk, anywhere on your own. They knew that whoever this attacker was, he were grabbing women when they were leaving a bus stop, or if they were out on a run in a park, he'd grab them. Now, he would always grab them from behind, and he would drag them into some bushes or a secluded area, and he would force them to perform oral sex. He would sometimes have intercourse with them, sometimes not.
It's kind of like opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's obviously sat there waiting for a woman to come running past by
yeah.
herself, and then
no one else been around.
Yeah.
Perfect opportunity to grab. And also, some of his victims were beat after, but again, not all of them. Now, when these reports first started coming in, this predator were groping random women.
Right.
So he'd walk past and grope the bum or grope the boobs. But as the time went on, these attacks become more violent.
More frequent.
More frequent. And the media named this guy as the Scarborough rapist. The police never really had much to go on. All victims were approached from behind, so no one ever really saw his face. What they did know is he were a young man, a good-looking young man, with light-coloured hair. Narrows it down. So, as time went on, the police managed to collect about 100 different DNA samples from any potential suspects.
Put your teeth in.
I know, I can't talk. But nothing ever came as a match. The Toronto police called in an FBI profiler to help them build a profile on this guy or who this guy could be. And then after analysing all the reports, they were able to link 4 more attacks to the Scarborough rapist, which took the total to 11. So in all, there were 11 people that they believed was attacked by this same man. The FBI said that the attacks were anger-based and sadistic in nature, and whoever this person was very dangerous. They felt that this person was a high-functioning person, intelligent, psychopathic, sexually sadistic, and he must live in the area. They said early 20s, and he will have had violent relationships with women in the past. So when Paul met Carla in 87, there'd already been 3 attacks on women.
Right.
Okay? Carla never suspected Paul. Everyone knew about this Scarborough rapist because it were all over media, but she never once suspected him.
It's one of them, and it's either, oh yeah, that bloke definitely looks like there's something wrong with him, or it's a case of
he's that normal. Yeah.
I don't believe that this man has done this because the man that we know is not that.
We've said this many a times though. Could you imagine? I know we use our Richard as a scapegoat all the time, bless him, but like us knowing Richard on a level that we know Richard, could you imagine waking up one day to Richard's been arrested for murder for being a serial killer.
No.
It'd be like, what?
Just not feasible at all,
No.
is it?
And that's what it must be like to these people. Now, it's said that Carla just never ever were concerned that it could be him. To her, he were perfect. He'd turn up with flowers all the time, he'd get her gifts. He treated her really, really well. Don't forget as well, he lived in Scarborough and she were in St Catherine's. So he would drive over 80 miles to visit her most days a week and spend time with her. Carla's family also loved him. They thought he were a really good catch, well educated, charming, and his life seemed to be on right sort of track. Carla then graduated from high school in 1989 and she was sort of like trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. But around this time, her friends started to notice a change in how she would talk about Paul. So before, it were always about how charming he was, how lovely all these gifts and flowers.
Yeah.
But then it changed and she started to worry about the abuse that he could sometimes show. It started with like verbally abusing her here and there.
Cracks were starting to show.
Yeah. But she always sort of forgive him. He'd turn up with more flowers, say sorry, and they'd be all right.
Always forgive him.
Yeah. In December 1989, Carla and Paul went on a romantic holiday to Niagara Falls, and that's where Paul got on one knee and asked Carla to marry him. And of course, she said yes. So they soon set the wedding day and they planned to get married in the spring of 1991. Going to the 29th of May in 1990, police release a sketch of what they thought that this Scarborough rapist would look like. And it ended up everywhere. It were on all newspapers, front page, everywhere. And actually, some of Paul's friends started talking and they sort of kind of like, do you not think this looks like Paul a little bit? And quite a few of them agreed. So one of his best friends rang police and explained that, you know, me and a few friends think that this could be our friend Paul Bernardo. Now, a few months later, in November, there'd been a load more calls to the same police, all saying the same, we believe this could be Paul.
Yeah.
From different people. So it were at this point that police thought, do you know what, we sort of need to bring him in and question him. So they did, and they also asked while he was there if he were willing to give a DNA sample. And he said, yeah, not a problem, willingly give it. Police obviously let him go. Now, don't forget, we're in 1990. So, although they had his DNA, things weren't as quick as what they are now.
Yeah.
And they'd also managed to collect over 100 samples from other suspects.
That they had to work through.
They had to work through. So, his DNA was sent over to the lab, but it just got put on a shelf and it sat with the rest of them waiting for their turn to basically
Be looked at.
Now, I don't know if this is because the police had questioned him and they'd rattled him a little bit, but after that, he decided to move, and he moved over to be with Carla in St Catherine's. He moved in with her family, and the plan was that they were going to live there with her mum and dad, the siblings, till they saved up enough money to eventually get their own house.
Yeah.
Now, funny enough, after Paul moved, all of a sudden, the attacks stopped over in Scarborough, but they soon started in St Catherine's. That's ironic.
Strange.
But again, no one ever seemed to be suspicious of Paul. Everyone just sort of... In fact, I'm sick of hearing this word, but everything I've read, everyone just adored him. He must have been able to charm the pants off anyone, because that's all everyone kept saying. Carla's little sister, Tammy, who was 15, she also adored Paul. She looked up to him like a big brother, but Paul started to get really dark urges towards Tammy, and he started with his peeping. He'd watch her get undressed quite a lot, and then he told Carla that he needed to give in to these urges, and he needed to explain to her that there was something he wanted that she just couldn't give him, and that were a virgin. Now, he made Carla feel like complete dog shit about not being a virgin, apparently, and basically said to her, closest thing to your virginity is to give me your little sister's virginity, Tammy's.
Fucking
Honestly. Could you imagine? In what sort of universe would anyone think that were alright to approach your girlfriend and say?
And he's fucking said it out loud.
Out loud?
To her sister.
A 15-year-old girl. So, Paul really started to pressure Karla, and he really, really wanted to take Tammy's virginity. They decided to come up with a plan. Karla said she just wanted to please Paul, or he'd leave her, and together they came up with a plan to drug her little sister so Paul could rape her.
Sick as fuck.
Sick bastards, I know. So on 23rd of December 1990, Karla's family were all going to bed, but Karla and Paul asked Tammy if she would like to stay up with them a bit late, have a few sneaky drinks, whatever. So she does. Karla then goes to make the drinks, and she crushes up pills, puts them into Tammy's, and in fact, at this point, she were working at a vet's, so she stole the tranquilizers, and that's what she crushed up and put in her sister's drink.
Planned.
Absolute piece of shit. Now, she knew that these were going to knock her sister out and keep her asleep while Paul rapes her. She also soaked a rag in allothane. I think that's how you say it. Now, that's a general anaesthetic that they use. So she held the rag over her little sister's face while her boyfriend raped her. Not only that, but they then decided to get out the camcorder and they were going to film the whole thing. Because why wouldn't you? When Paul said that he was satisfied and he'd finished, he turned to Karla and said, "It's your turn," which she fucking did. They also filmed this. I can't wrap my head around why anyone wouldn't have just ran. If your partner says out loud to you, "I want to rape your 15-year-old sister," who in the right mind thinks it's okay to stay?
A lot of people in the right mind, obviously, would say, "What the fuck, you piece of shit," all that shit. But Rose West,
I know.
Myra Inley, there is people out there
I know they
that
exist.
will accept what Paul has said about his urges, as sick as they fucking are. And unfortunately, some people just...
It baffles my brain every time. So once that had finished and Karla had finished assaulting her own sister, Tammy started to be sick and started to choke on her own vomit. They started to freak out, quickly got her dressed, hid the camcorder, and then rang ambulance. When paramedics arrived, Paul and Karla told them that they tried to revive her. She'd basically passed out from drinking with them, but they didn't know what was going on. Tammy then were taken to hospital, but she were pronounced dead not soon after getting there.
Poor girl.
One of the doctors that was examining Tammy noticed that she had this burn mark around her mouth, and that's where Karla had held the rag against her face.
Yeah.
But Karla and Paul explained it as a carpet burn, and they said that when Tammy started to choke and be sick, they pulled her off the bed, which has then give her a carpet burn across her face.
It kind of makes sense.
And doctors bought this. They believed it. And that were it. It were concluded that at 15-year-old, Tammy had died of natural causes. So they got away with it.
Unbelievable.
Karla's parents obviously were absolutely fucking heartbroken, devastated.
Little did they know.
Little did they know. They actually thought it was just a really tragic accident. A month later, after Tammy had died, Paul and Karla had then saved enough money, so they went and got this lovely little house on the outskirts of St Catherine's. It said that once they'd moved in, the abuse from Paul would just took up massively.
Well, they were on their own then, weren't they?
Yeah, there were no one else there.
He didn't have to hide his fucking sick self.
No. He would tell Karla openly that he was the Scarborough rapist, but then he'd always laugh it off and say, "I'm just joking." He went from being sort of like I said before, verbally abusive to then physically abusive. She would tell Paul that she was going to leave him, but he straight away threatened that if you're going to leave me and you're going to take me down, I'm fucking dragging you down with me. I've got this film.
Yeah, because bearing in mind you fucking raped your sister as well.
Yeah. So we're now on the 15th of June 1991, and this is 2 weeks before Karla and Paul get married. He came home for a surprise for his wife to be. I'm not talking fucking flowers. He walked in with a 14-year-old girl called Leslie. Paul said that he'd seen her in a back garden.
Could you imagine if I walked in with another...
Fuck off!
Another girl, not a 14-year-old, but another woman, and just went, surprise!
I'd be like, what the fuck you doing, dickhead? He said that he'd seen her in a back garden, and I'd fucking kick you out so fast, honestly. So anyway, he said that he'd seen Leslie in a back garden, and he'd basically offered her a cig. She said yeah, walked at car with him, and he dragged her in. Got her in his car and drove off. And he took her home to Carla. Karla and Paul held her captive in their house, repeatedly raping her whilst filming it all again. After keeping her for 24 hours, they then strangled her to death, then decided to dismember her body. And they then took different parts of her body, different limbs, and they mixed them in with concrete to create concrete blocks. And they then dumped them into the local lake.
It's pretty smart, that.
Which is Lake Gibson. It's smart, but hard fucking work.
Yeah, and awful.
We ain't going to be chopping no bodies up in our fucking little bathroom, mate. And mixing concrete. If you had a concrete mixer out in our back garden, our mates would wonder what the fuck were going on. That's for sure.
Because it won't be mine.
Exactly. So, 29th of July, Karla and Paul get married. They've got over 100 people there, friends and family, all sharing this special day. You know, to them, this was still a really perfect couple. That's how they presented to everybody. On that same day, a fisherman had started discovering some of the 14-year-old girl, Leslie, from the lake. Everybody in St. Catherine's were absolutely fucking horrified. It was all over the news. Everybody knew what was going on, basically. You lived a very sheltered life if you didn't. The police spent the following year, so a full year, trying to find any sort of leads, any clues into who could have killed this girl, and they decided to bring in the same FBI profiler that they used for the Scarborough rapist.
Yeah.
Now, at this time, the profiler said that he had no reason to connect the two and that they were separate. He just didn't believe that they were committed by the same person.
Bearing in mind, you said that obviously they had less resources then.
Oh, yeah. So, Paul and Carla's life carried on. Happily newlyweds. Paul actually became quite cocky. He knew what he was getting away with. He knew what he'd got away with in Scarborough. And he were now in St. Catherine's. They'd just killed a girl. This is a year after, and no one had ever suspected him. So, he become cocky.
And complacent.
Yes. He wanted more. He asked Carla to get in touch with some of Tammy's friends, her little sister's friends, and invite them over so they could drug them the same way in which they did with Tammy and rape them. So over that next year, Carla managed to get several young girls over to hang out at their house, and they would drug and sexually assault them, video them, and just do fucking awful things that they obviously did. None of these victims died. They all survived. They had no idea.
Which is weird because they killed the 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And obviously her sister ended up choking to death. But then he's gone and viciously raped so many girls and not killed them.
Do you know why I think that is?
Because he's so unbelievably cocky.
No, I think it's probably that as well, because he is a cocky bastard. But if you think about it, these several girls were all friends of Tammy's. So surely they will know the family, their family will know their family. And what if any one of these had said, I'm going over to Karla and Paul's, they've invited me, and then they're dead?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's my reasoning behind it. I could be completely fucking wrong. But it is strange that they didn't kill any of those victims. They would wake up the next day and have absolutely no fucking memory at all. They would not know they'd been... Well, they wouldn't remember being assaulted. They would know, but they had absolutely no memory. Like I said, they were filmed as well. Now, Paul kept all these. It was his little collection, his little souvenirs.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's what they're doing it. And this collection was just growing and getting bigger because him and Carla just continued to fucking rape and abuse and hurt people like they did. Then, 16th of April 1992, Paul and Carla went out for a drive with the sole intention of bringing back yet another victim. And they spotted a 15-year-old girl called Kristen, and she were walking home from school. So what they did is they drove past her, they pulled into a church car park, and they waited for her to approach. Carla then would sit in passenger seat, and she'd shout over, basically asking for directions. Can you help me? I'm lost. Carla would have this map in her hand. She'd make it look really believable that there were just two people lost.
Yeah.
So this girl, of course I'll help you.
Yeah, well, it's another Myra and Lee. She was the one who lured him.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, Kristen walked up to the car. She was dragged in, and they just drove off with her. Now, it weren't actually long before Kristen was reported missing, and a few witnesses came forward to say that they saw her talking to a couple in the church car park in the car. So they said that the car that they saw and the car that was seen driving away was a beige Camaro. So with this, the police went full force. They started putting appeals out. They started putting billboards up of this car, asking for anybody to come forward if they know anybody with this car. But what they didn't know was that all them witness statements were wrong. And in fact, Paul drove a gold Nissan.
Right.
So the police had put this out there to
And
search.
it's wrong.
Yeah. So they wasted a lot of fucking time looking.
Not good, is it?
No, it's not. But whilst all this time had been wasted, the media started to link the disappearance, of the previous girl, Leslie, the 14-year-old, and Kristen. So the media started to link them together. But again, the FBI profiler said no, he didn't think it was the same person, didn't think it was the same suspect. But what he did say is that it was likely to be a white male, late 20s, history of sexual violent crimes and violent personal relationships. Now, if you ask me...
How do you narrow that down?
That just was not that said about the Scarborough rapist as well. So how do you fucking narrow that down? I don't know.
There's a lot of fucking strange people.
There is. So Paul and Carla kept Kristen for several days. Again, filming the assaults, filming the rapes. Once Paul felt satisfied and that he'd finished assaulting her and he was satisfied, again, they decided to strangle her to death. On the 30th of April 1992, Kristen's body was found over 30 miles away in Burlington, in a ditch not far from a local graveyard. But again, no leads, no clues, nothing. But then in January of 93, Paul assaulted Carla really bad. She ended up going to hospital. He'd attacked her with a torch. He broke her rib. She had 2 black eyes and quite severe bruising. They'd been married for just over 2 years by this point. And this is when Carla basically decided to leave him and said, enough's enough.
So not before, no?
No. But as soon as it became hers the target, she were out of there. Didn't fucking feel like that for these poor young girls though, did you, love?
No.
Dickhead. Around the same time as Carla were leaving Paul, his DNA had finally come round to be tested. So you see the time frame there of how long it just sat there. So Paul's DNA were being tested for the Scarborough rapist case, and it came back as a match. So the police finally start connecting things together. But what they do is, instead of going straight and arresting Paul, they decide to target Carla. They'd seen she'd been in hospital, that he'd been abusive to her, and they kind of thought that if this woman knows anything...
Should be the best case of getting him...
Yeah, getting him locked up.
Yeah.
Any evidence that she probably could be the best person that'll help him. So Carla actually thought they were bringing her in to question her about the attack that Paul did on her. But when she were there, obviously she realised that, no, they're on to Paul. And she knew that time was sort of running out. So what she did is she went home to her family and apparently just broke down, confessed to everything to her parents.
Even
her sister's murder. Now, as parents, what the fuck do you do?
I've no idea.
What they did is they told her to call a lawyer, and that's what she did. So, obviously, I'm assuming they would have been fucking devastated finding out that their daughter was responsible for the other daughters. Not only that, but the rape, the drugging, the fucking awful attack on her.
Did she tell them that she videoed it as well, the sick bitch?
Honestly. So, she did. She went and got a lawyer, like I said, and she told the lawyer everything. She told the lawyer that Paul was the rapist that the police have been looking for. She admitted to being involved with Tammy, and what they did is they set up and agree for a plea deal. So if Carla would testify against Paul, then she would get a reduced sentence. I've watched some of the interview tapes of the police interviewing Carla.
Yeah.
Right? She fucking knew everything. I don't give a shit what anybody says. My opinion is that woman was far more involved than you and I know. Mm-hmm. And I think she was well aware of Paul's attacks before she says that she was.
Yeah, and now she's holding out cards.
Of course she is. She's got you by a fucking thread, mate. She was, put it this way, from what I saw, she were a lot smarter than what she was trying to behave. Because she was sat there, and I don't know if you've seen him or heard him, but she talks in this really quiet, innocent voice. And like she's a little bit, dare I say, dim. Mm. Do you know what I mean?
And let's not forget, this woman fucking raped her own sister and killed her and got rid of the body. Yeah.
So, the police obviously go and arrest Paul. While they've got him in custody, they ask Carla to show them around their home, where things happened. And again, everything's so... She's unfazed. So she takes them to the bathroom and she's like, yeah, and this is where he chopped her body up. Excuse me, do you know where my perfume is? Who's taken all my perfume out of here? They're my things. Like, I just watched it thinking, hang on. Like, that's the last thing that you should be worrying about, love.
Yeah.
She just didn't show no emotion. The only other time I saw her show emotion was she'd taken the police into the kitchen and there was some expensive, like, champagne glasses. And it really pissed her off that these are the glasses that Paul would use to give the girls drinks to drug them. Because, according to Carla, they never use them glasses. They was only for special occasions. And there was, that's on it all the time. I saw emotion from her, which was really fucking strange.
Fuck off, love.
Yeah, just get fucked. Carla obviously had informed the police about these tapes, and she basically said that Paul had forced her to be a part of all these attacks against her will. She told them that the tapes were in the house and that if they found them, they would have absolutely everything on them that they would need to prosecute Paul.
She's giving you him on a plate.
Yeah.
How noble of her.
Such a good citizen. 17th of February 93, that's when Paul was officially arrested. The police actually, I'm laughing and I shun, but the police begin searching the house. Obviously the whole goal was to find said tapes. 71 fucking days they spent searching that house. This house wasn't a big house. Like, this isn't Murder Castle.
Yeah, but they obviously were going through it with a fine-tooth comb.
They still didn't find them.
Oh.
71 days.
Right.
And they didn't find them. And so obviously without them, there weren't really any... They haven't got much.
Just their say so, really.
Yeah. Now, obviously, they've got his DNA in connection to the attacks in Scarborough, but they've got no evidence linking him to these murders, to ever being around these two young girls.
What about all the assaults and rapes that he did previous with Tammy's friends? Did none of them come forward?
Well, they were in Scarborough, weren't they? So none of those came forward. I'll get to that bit.
Right.
All right. So, yeah, they had no actual direct evidence to link Paul to the crimes. So this is when the plea deal with Carla was... Arranged, yeah, perfect word.
We always finish each other's sentences.
And they basically were heavily relying on her testifying against him, because other than that, they had fuck all.
Well, they had the DNA.
Yeah, but nothing for the murders.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this deal was kept a secret from public.
Of course it was, because there'd have been fucking uproar.
Well, it caused fucking outrage. When it emerged, it caused outrage. I don't understand. I understand why they kept it a deal, because they were trying to get Paul locked up, but that were a shit deal to make with somebody that's telling you that her husband just coerced her into being involved in all this without... It would just seem like a bit of a mad plea deal for me. So on the 28th of June 93, Carla appeared in court for her involvement, and the court put a public ban on a trial, which again is very fucking rare. They don't usually public ban these cases, like we know, are usually quite well publicised.
Well, the George Floyd one recently. Yeah,
massively. You could watch all that.
Yeah.
Every single court day you could watch start to finish, couldn't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, normally they're quite public, but they put a ban. And again, public were absolutely fuming. They felt that it was their right to know her involvement, and they were denying their right. So Carla was convicted of manslaughter charges, and she was sentenced to 12 years. Fucking 12 years. She was sent to prison, and it said the police and court tried to justify the reason they kept the plea deal a secret was to make sure that Paul got a fair trial. Bullshit. They just wanted her to be their little fucking stepping stone to catch him.
Yeah.
And they were willing to make a deal with her that were absolutely fucking ridiculous. So on 18th of May 1995, Paul's trial then begins. He decided to plead not guilty on all 9 charges, obviously, in connection with the deaths of Leslie and Kristen, including kidnapping, unlawful confinement, aggravated sexual assault and murder. Now, the prosecution then presented new evidence during the trial that no one knew about. They'd found the tapes.
Right.
So these tapes was given in evidence against Paul, but not only Paul, Carla as well, because these tapes revealed a completely different version of events, and they felt like Carla had completely misled them to believe that she had very little involvement.
Believe her bullshit.
Because on those tapes, Carla is seen fully taking part.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee if they'd have seen those tapes before her plea deal, she wouldn't have got it at all. Now, Paul is obviously on these tapes. You can see him on these tapes. But his defence argued that that doesn't make him a killer. Right. He's denying murder.
It makes him a rapist piece of shit, but it don't make him a murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't show him killing anyone, basically, and that's what their defence. And instead, Paul then put all the blame onto Carla and said that she was the one responsible for killing the victims, not him. On the 19th of June, Carla testified against Paul. She said that she was a victim of Paul's and he was the mastermind behind it. When asked about the tapes, Carla said that she had suffered from battered spouse syndrome.
Right.
And that basically were her defence. So, battered spouse syndrome is basically, when you're that terrified and you're in such an abusive situation that you can be controlled into some of the most awful things.
Which is horrible, but...
And it does exist, but...
Karla Homolka, you're talking shit.
Yeah, and not only that, to actually be able to use the battered spouse syndrome as a defence, you have to qualify for different things, I want to say. So sort of like an assessment.
Right.
And she didn't.
Right.
At all. So yeah, you're right. She talks shit. She basically said that he'd abused her and battered her and coerced her into all this. Some actually believed her. Some believed that Paul was abusive to her and that, yeah, she probably did suffer some awful domestic violence and some awful abuse. But they also said that she was more of an accomplice rather than...
She was fully involved.
Oh, yeah. Now, the jury were allowed to watch these tapes, but they only played them in court. So you could only hear what was being said, you couldn't see.
Right.
Does that make sense? Now, they said they've done this because they wanted the jurors to be fully aware of exactly what sort of things went on in these attacks, but they refused to play them in the court because obviously families were there.
Yeah.
They don't want to see that. They don't have to relive.
No.
It's bad enough imagining what would have happened
To your daughter.
Yeah, never mind having to watch it.
Yeah.
So, Paul's trial lasted months, and by the end of it, the jury deliberated for 5 hours. And on the 1st of September, 31-year-old Paul was found guilty on all charges against him, including the 2 murders. Paul was sentenced to life in prison, and then when he were in prison, he also confessed to 14 sexual assaults on women. I'm assuming these...
Tammy's friends.
Yeah. The judge then declared him a dangerous offender, which will keep him in prison without the chance of parole.
Good.
So he'll just die in prison.
He'll rot in prison.
And that's where he belongs, if you ask me.
That's where she belongs.
Yeah, 100%. Now, everything I've read about this, the biggest debate around this case was that Carla got off far too easily.
Yeah.
100%. That I don't think there's any arguing with that. Carla's plea deal actually became one of the worst in Canadian history. In fact, a year later, an investigation was launched into the investigation originally happened and how Carla came to get
This plea deal.
this plea deal. The Canadian police now implemented some new laws in which they keep close eye on any sort of sexual predators if you've ever been in prison for anything sexual related. So I'm assuming kind of like a sex offenders register. That's what I would assume anyway. On the 4th of July 2005, 35-year-old Carla was released from prison, and that woman is now free, out and about, as far as I know, still living in Canada.
Living the rest of her life.
She went on to have a pretty much normal sort of relationship. She had 3 children. She doesn't live with her children anymore. I didn't have a look about and dig at that. She applied to the courts to try and get her name changed because, as you can imagine, she wasn't welcome anywhere.
Yeah.
No one wanted her living anywhere near them. But the court denied it and said, no, you chose to do this crime, you stick with the name that you've got.
You're lucky you aren't in fucking prison.
For a lot fucking longer than what you should have been.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Carla is currently walking around somewhere in Canada.
And he's rotting in prison.
Yeah, and that's my case.
Ken and Barbie. Murderers.
Yeah. I think she was more involved, 100%. But...
So what did you think about that case when you were researching it?
It fucked. Absolutely crazy. I don't understand. Like I said before, I know there is people that do it, and we've got a lot of evidence of people women that do it. But I'll still never. I don't think it'll ever get to a point where it doesn't baffle me anymore.
Yeah, because sometimes you read stuff and you're like, I need to read that again because.
Yeah. When I got to the part of him outright asking his girlfriend if he could rape her sister. And not only that, but you're going to help me, and then you're going to rape her. I'm like, what the fuck?
Just never surprised, never not surprised, are you?
No. So that's a wrap from me.
Right, so I'm second this week.
Who you got for me?
And my case is about a person, a male, called Robert John Maudsley. Now, this man, he's popped up quite a few times on Facebook for different reasons. And I've never actually looked into it. And this time I thought, do you know what? I'm going to have a look at it. And I'm glad I did.
Okay.
So, Robert John Maudsley was born 26th of June 1953 in Toxteth, Liverpool. His parents were George and Jean, working family.
Mm-hmm.
George and Jean weren't the best parents.
Okay.
Massively neglected the children.
Yeah.
And at 6 months old, Robert got put in care at 6 months with some of his other siblings.
Okay.
Now, he went on to have something like, I think he was one of 12 children.
Bloody hell.
I don't know if there were 12 children that got put in care. That might have been...
But some of those 12.
Yeah. And allegedly they thrived in a nun's orphanage. And they spent 9 years there.
Okay.
And they allegedly thrived. And then somehow...
Did they go back?
They got back.
Fuck's
They got
sake.
these children back.
Why?
So these abusive parents used to beat them, hit them with a belt, which is just disgusting. Locked them in rooms for weeks. Robert tended to get it the most.
Okay. Again, that's another thing that baffles me.
Yeah.
When you've got more than one child, and there's one that then becomes a target.
Yeah.
That baffles me because they're your kids.
Yeah. And you obviously feel that hateful towards them.
That you're going to treat them in such a way.
It's just disgusting.
But not only that, can you imagine, as a sibling, witnessing your sibling being targeted?
Like, I massively don't believe in smacking kids.
No.
I know kids can be little dickheads and, you know...
God, our kids are little dickheads, Philip.
It just...
You're a massive believer in there's other ways
than
having to smack them.
Yeah.
And, you know, we always say how you decide to parent your children has got fuck all to do with us. You know, it's not my monkey, not my circus.
Exactly.
But we just don't feel like we need to.
I don't want to.
No, I know. But there's other ways.
You don't need to as well.
Yeah.
His brother mentioned that he can remember at one point his dad actually breaking an air rifle on the back of poor young Robert.
Fucking hell, so he's hitting with some force then, hasn't he?
Robert says he can remember being locked in a room for 6 months and his dad had come in 2 or 3 times a day just to beat him.
Wow.
At 18, Robert ran away to London. A few of his other siblings went their separate ways.
Yeah.
Robert
well, I can imagine
ran away to London.
that when you reach an age, growing up in a house like that, as soon as you're old enough, you're fucking out of there.
Yeah. Now, everywhere I've looked, they said that Robert was a rent boy in London, which I don't really like. I think it's
not right nice, is it?
So, Robert worked as a sex worker
in
London. He had a drug habit. It was 1970s, dangerous place, mixing with criminals. He attempted to commit suicide a few times.
Okay.
He had been brutally raped in London, taken advantage of.
It just sounds like a gentleman that's all his life has had people just abuse him.
He said that he was hearing voices to order to kill his parents, which he probably had a lot of hate for his parents, as other people would.
Yeah, that don't mean they're going to kill him though.
No. So in 1974, Robert Maudsley was 21 years old, and he was picked up by a labourer called John Farrell for sex.
Right.
And allegedly, this John Farrell decided to show Maudsley some pictures of children that he had tied up and sexually abused.
Did he lose his shit?
So, Robert Maudsley... Now, I've seen 2 different things here, but the one that we're going with is Robert Maudsley, from behind, it was either a necktie or rope or something, and strangled him to death. Now, I read somewhere else that not only did he strangle him, he then went on to stab him and smash him over the head with a hammer. But I've only read that in one place. So,
Okay. Who knows?
but, like you said, the childhood trauma
It's all brought back. I'm not...
all comes flooding back of these sick pictures that this fucking bloke
Yeah.
has shown
And
him.
he's lost his shit, hasn't he?
And
Yeah.
he's just flipped. Then, Robert Maudsley, what he does is he decides not to run.
Mm.
He walks into local police station and says, I've just killed a sex offender. Please help me.
Okay.
So he hands himself in, tells the police what happened. Police went to John Farrell's house, found the body exactly as Robert had described.
Yeah.
They nicknamed Robert Blue because the murder was so violent where he strangled him. This gentleman's face was just pure blue.
Right. Again, that's a lot of fucking anger because we've watched and we've seen, read, whatever, enough things to know. People think strangling's easy.
And
It's not.
And I dare say it takes longer than you think it would.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but they declared him unfit to stand trial and he was sent to Broadmoor Hospital
Okay.
for the criminally insane and
Yeah.
was there for 3 years. In 1977, while he was being held at Broadmoor, Robert and another inmate had planned to hold another prisoner hostage, a paedophile.
Right, okay.
Now, this goes down as one of the most infamous incidents in British prison. They locked themselves in a cell
Yeah.
with this paedophile. They tortured him for 9 hours. They rammed a spoon in his ear all the way into his brain. People said that his head was cracked open like a boiled egg.
Oh my god.
I don't know why you compare it to that, but his head was cracked open like a boiled egg. There were various news reports that Robert had ate part of his brain, but it was later disproved. And this got him the nickname Hannibal Lecter,
Right.
Britain's Hannibal Lecter. So this time, he was found fit to stand trial,
Yeah.
and he was convicted of manslaughter, and he was sent to Wakefield Prison. Now, Wakefield Prison is 20 minutes from me and Carla, where we live in West Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So it's quite local, and it's nicknamed the Monster Mansion because of the amount of sexual offenders, murderers.
It's there to house.
We're talking the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
For example, Harold Shipman, the black cab rapist John Warboys, Ian Watkins, the paedophile who attempted to rape a baby,
Yeah.
and of course Ian Huntley.
Yep.
Now, I don't think they're there at the minute, but obviously they have been there at times.
Yep.
So it's not a nice place.
It's not, but can I just chip in here? Because don't forget, when you were doing your research for this case and you came across this Wakefield prison, I had no fucking idea it was there.
I
knew there were a prison
I knew
in
there were a
Wakefield.
Wakefield prison, but I didn't realise it was that close to the town centre.
No,
Yeah.
like we had it on Google Maps, didn't we? And
Yeah.
we were quite shocked.
It's a good job they've got fucking high walls.
100% high walls with lots of fields before any houses. But we couldn't believe just how close it was, could we?
No, unbelievable. And then there were a few weeks before Robert offended again. This time, he lured a Salney Darwood into his cell, who he was in prison for killing his wife. Robert cut his throat and hid him under his bed.
Just hid him under his bed in his cell.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he spent the rest of that morning trying to lure others into his cell. Now, from what I read, people were like, oh, this guy's fucking nuts. I ain't going
nowhere near his
anywhere with
cell.
him."
No.
So eventually, Robert snuck into a cell of 56-year-old Bill Roberts, who was in for sexually assaulting a 7-year-old.
There's this pattern in there.
He hacked at his skull with a makeshift knife and then repeatedly bashed his head against the wall.
Nice.
Then, what Robert Maudsley did was he calmly walked into the wing office, placed his knife on the desk, and told the officer, "There'll be 2 less for roll call tonight."
Oh my god.
I wouldn't say I find that.
It's not funny, but in his, like, not justifying anyone ever killing anybody.
Yeah.
But to me, I've not heard this. I don't know this kid. I don't know anything about this gentleman. And what I've took from this so far is this kid suffered horrific fucking abuse. You know, to the point if you're locked in a bedroom for 6 months, consecutively locked in a bedroom with no interaction, the only interaction you've got is your dad coming in
And
twice,
beating you.
3 times a day to knock fuck out of you.
Yeah.
This is now a pattern of he's going to have so many mental scars
Yeah.
that are going to cause him to have this pure hate.
Yeah.
And that's what it looks like to me.
So, like I said, he placed his knife on the desk and said, "There'll be 2 less for roll call tonight." So then, work began for Robert Maudsley's special cell. And it has a glass front cell.
Right.
Not from, but obviously like the hit film
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs. Hello, Clarice.
Yes.
From the day Maudsley announced there will be 2 short on the roll call. Prisoner 467637 has spent 23 hours out of every 24 in his cell. He spent more than 40 years in solitary confinement.
Wow.
He once wrote, "Prison authorities see me as a problem. Their solution has been to put me in solitary confinement and throw away the key to bury me alive in a concrete coffin. I am left to stagnate, vegetate and regress." In 1983, a specially constructed cell was made for Maudsley at HMP Wakefield, where he has been ever since.
Wow.
The 5.5 metres by 4.5 metres space is effectively a 2-room cage with bulletproof perspex windows and a team of prison officers dedicated to looking after him. Like I said, it bears a resemblance to the film Silence of the Lambs, although this was built 7 years before the film was released.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, which I think...
That's quite cool info,
Yeah.
that.
To reach this unit as a visitor, you have to pass through 17 locked steel doors, and the only furniture is a table and a chair, both made from cardboard. Yeah, the toilet and sink are bolted to the floor, while his bed is a concrete slab with a mattress. In 2000, Robert Maudsley made an application to be allowed to take a cyanide pill rather than face the rest of his life in solitary. His application to die was made before Mr. Justice Maurice Kay at Liverpool High Court. After a 5-day hearing, it was dismissed. After the hearing, Maudsley wrote a letter to a newspaper which read, "What purpose is served by keeping me locked up for 23 hours a day? Why even bother to feed me and give me 1 hour's exercise a day? Who actually am I at risk to?" Well, we know.
Yeah.
He is a risk.
100% he is a risk.
Yeah. As a consequence of my current treatment and confinement, I feel that all I have to look forward to is indeed psychological breakdown, mental illness and probable suicide. Why can't I have a budgie instead of flies, cockroaches and spiders, which I currently have? I promise to love it and not eat it.
Is that what he put?
Yeah. Why can't I have a television in my cell to see the world and learn? Why can't I have any music tapes and listen to beautiful classical music? If this prison service says no, then I ask for a simple cyanide capsule, which I shall willingly take, and the problem of Robert John Maudsley can easily and swiftly be resolved.
Wow.
Former police detective Paul Harrison has interviewed Robert Maudsley and says, "He's a clever guy." He said, "They've done bad things and 99.9 deserve to be where they are, but there are those that make you think. You've got the image of a monster, a horrible evil man. He's got this reputation that's been perpetuated by the service. I'd got all these preconceived ideas, but when we were communicating, I could understand why he did what he did."
That's exactly what I feel.
If you didn't know him and what he'd done and you saw him in a bar, he's really intelligent, clever guy who'd make you smile. He'd talk about everyday things. A lot of are really intense and narcissistic and talk about themselves, talking about serial killers, and I didn't find him like that at all. He's the only one where I thought, wow, this is something different to any serial killer. He's different. He found himself siding with Maudsley in his repeated pleas to relax his solitary confinement. This detective also says he doesn't want to get out of prison, he's been in there too long. His issues are more about getting equal treatment with other prisoners, getting some fresh air. But because he's a special category and a danger to society, it's like he's become legend even in the prison system. he killed 2 paedophiles, but I really feel empathy for him. There are people worse than him in prison system who get away with a lot more. I came out and I wrote to the Home Secretary, I wrote to the Queen, everybody, and I didn't get a single reply. And this is a police detective.
Wow.
Maudsley's health is reported to have declined in recent years, and there are also suggestions that his mental health has deteriorated and he's living out his days waiting to die behind bars. Since the death of Ian Brady in 2017, Maudsley has become the longest serving British prisoner.
I feel really sad for him.
It's, like I said, I'm glad I looked into it because it's not what I thought it was going to be.
We do the awful, really grim, detailed, horrific killings, don't we?
Yeah.
And I genuinely, I don't know this fucking guy. Like I'm feeling sorry for him, like I fucking know him. But I agree 100% in what that detective said.
Yeah.
That he isn't like a serial killer. Yes, he's killed 2 paedophiles, but if you take into consideration everything that guy went through as a child, you know, could you imagine being put into a care system, having 9 years of this wonderful, thriving life, to then be dragged back
By
the scum of the earth that should be your parents, to have to go through this awful...
I don't get it because, like, if you dislike your child enough to do these awful things to them, when they are away, let them be away.
Yeah.
Don't
bring them back.
Don't drag them back.
It's like the case you did with the girl in the closet.
Yeah.
Again, you know, she was given to the friends until she then got her back.
And in a way, I know he's killed 4 people.
Yeah.
But in a way, I feel sorry for him that he's treated like he is.
There's people that we've done cases on that have done... I've just done a case on a woman called fucking Carla that not only were involved in luring young young girls to be raped by her husband, boyfriend at the time, whatever, then to be raped by her, be involved in the murder and dismembering of somebody's body, be involved in the murder of your own sister, and to get 12 fucking years in a normal prison, and then you look at this guy, it's absolutely fucking ridiculous.
And one of the things that I found when I'd Googled Robert Maudsley is one of the first things that you read was the real life Hannibal Lecter.
That's what I mean. So he's
the eating of the brain.
Yeah.
The violent prisoner, which he is all them things. He's a murderer. He is, but.
But do you believe it's fair that he's locked up in a cage that small? Which, by the way, is a cage within a cage. He's got bulletproof perspex glass. You know, he's got a fucking table and chairs made out of bastard cardboard.
Yeah.
A mattress on a cold slab of concrete.
Yeah.
Everything's bolted down, and he gets 1 hour per day.
And just think how long he's been there.
That's what I mean. Is that fair? I don't think that's fair. I think it's really, really wrong.
And this is why I'm said to you, I'm glad I looked into it now.
Yeah, I want to have a look.
There is a few interviews with him on YouTube when he's discussing his parents and that.
To me, do you know what it sounds like? You know when you said right at the beginning, like, he'd started hearing voices? Is that why he was sent to Broadmoor then? Because it was more of a psychotic episode?
Maybe so, yeah.
I would have thought so.
And I think there's interviews where he said that if he'd killed his parents, none of these other... people
would have got hurt?
Yeah.
None of them. And I've not even watched anything with the guy. I've not read anything, but I believe that.
And it all starts from someone's family, someone abusing their child, treating their child like some people wouldn't even treat a dog. And look at him now.
You're shaping that person.
Yeah,
you're mapping that path out.
His parents shaped his life by the way that they treated him. He was always going to have issues, and that night when he was with that bloke and that bloke showed him them pictures, he's been there, he's been through that, and he obviously didn't want anyone else to go through that from that bloke, and that's why he killed him.
That 100%, that's exactly why I said to you something as soon as he saw them photos and that bloke bragging about these young children he snapped.
Yeah.
And that's where it began.
And like I said, he is a murderer.
Yeah,
He deserves to be in prison. He deserves to be in prison maybe for the rest of his life.
I am not saying that he does not
But
need to be in prison. Do you know what I mean?
I hope at some point Robert Maudsley gets took out of this
I'd like
Hannibal Lecter cell.
I'd like to think that eventually he's going to have to be allowed to sort of merge his way back into some sort of normal prison life. They can't keep being solitary.
I don't think they'll merge.
Forever.
I don't think they'll merge him with a lot of people.
Oh no! I think they'd have to be really careful in who he was around. Because he's obviously got his target. He's obviously got. But to be fair, how many years ago was it before when he last killed?
Well, let's have a look.
When did he last kill? Because I can guarantee after.
It was in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In the late 70s. So in fact, I told you the date, 1983.
Yeah.
A specially constructed cell was made for him. So
He's a fucking
nearly
hell.
40 years.
Inside a glass cell.
Yeah.
Can he receive mail?
I'm not sure. So I hope you enjoyed episode 12. Please give us some love. We really need it.
I'm sorry if
we're sounding beggy.
Don't say that, beggy. We're really not. We do want to try and push it though with social media a little bit, because the more that you lot share it, the more other people are going to see it, and we know that.
And then eventually, maybe we can go back to one a week.
Yeah, we've got enough people asking us, but I just don't think it's enough yet to justify the time it takes.
Yeah, because like I said, we do have 3 children and a dog
to keep occupied.
Yeah. So I hope you have a good 2 weeks.
We shall see you in a fortnight with 2 more cases.
See you soon.
Bye.